Good evening. If you would please take a handout. Let's get a handout. Explore some things about garments or clothes in our tradition. And then if you want to learn how to make a tzitzit, the fringes of the talit, you're more than welcome to try. We have the material for you. And thank you, Estelle. Wow, that's a... And we have the explanations. Okay, clothes in the Jewish tradition. So what is the first reference? Actually, who was the first tailor in the Bible? God. Okay, God, and this is the first source here, because after God created Adam and Eve, he made for them, as they call it here, look at the first source, and the Lord God made for Adam and his wife garments of skin and clothed them. Think about the image. What kind of a God we're talking about? We have the youth group at the same time, which is a blessing to have voices of young people. But if we can separate, that would even be better. Why do you think we have this image? What kind of an image is it of God who made clothes, not just made a clothes, also clothed them? Motherly. Okay. Protective, right? Clothes are mainly for protection. And modesty. You're jumping 1,000 years. No, that's good. No, modesty, because later on, garments will be associated specifically in the Jewish tradition and others with modesty, right? Okay, so this is a nice idea of God herself. He said motherly, and God has no gender, made the clothes and clothed Adam and Eve. Now, as the Bible said, he made garments of skin, or if you want, leather garments, right? But the Midrash has a beautiful pun here, because the word for skin or leather in Hebrew is the same word, is or. Or the same sound, not the same spelling, also means light. Okay, so or can mean skin or light. When you write it down, it's different. Or for skin is with an ein. Today we pronounce it the same, but traditionally the ein was pronounced or from deep in your throat versus or, okay? But the rabbis, of course, would not give up on this pun. And we read here that Rabbi Meir read when God made them kutanot or garments of skin, he read it garments of light. What do you think he meant by it? What's the difference between light and skin? Think philosophically. Skin is the most material thing you can think of, right? Light is not. It's spiritual. So according to Rabbi Meir, in the very beginning, God thought that Adam and Eve might be only spiritual beings. And their garments, if you will, is just made of light. They didn't need more than that. They didn't have a physical body. They were all spirit. This goes more into Jewish mysticism, but I just wanted you to have some idea of the fun that rabbis had with reading words a little bit differently. They knew that that was not the original meaning of the Torah, obviously, but it's nice to think about these two ways of looking at human beings, either as spiritual or material. Okay, Judaism looks at us as both. Some other traditions would like us to be only spiritual beings. And everything that is not spiritual, that is related to the body, is bad. You know, we have to eat, we have to do some other things, but that's not good. The only good thing is our spiritual activities. For Judaism, there is no dichotomy. Body and soul go together. Okay? So this is just, I wanted to start, as I normally do, with the first time we read about garments or about clothes in the Bible, and God is the tailor. Any comments on that? Yes, Sai. Okay, so Sai, I'm repeating for the sake of the people on Zoom. I got some comments that I forget to do that. So garments of skin, when you think about it, you're still naked. Okay, the idea that God created them, and I don't really know, you can envision it any way you want, all these organs and all these things were still, and then God put the skin on them, and that was the original garment. Okay, think about some movies that you see with all these aliens that have, or think about scuba diving, right? A wetsuit, that's a good thing, or a dry suit, actually, better, right? So this rubbery thing looks like your skin. That's your, okay, I think that was the image. After they ate from the tree of knowledge, they look, and then the modesty, if you will, came into place, and they were embarrassed to be naked, and then they made themselves garments made of which leaves? Fig, of fig leaf. Okay, so that's the first references. But I want to go to the commandments, to the mitzvot that are related to clothes, because every religion, I believe almost every major organization, has formal or informal dress code. Okay? It's easy to think about the army and police and firefighters, but sometimes even informal. I didn't watch the speech last night. I don't know who watched it, but I can tell you that I believe that every man in the audience was wearing a jacket and a tie, unless they were soldiers and they wore their own regalia there. Not true? Some did not have a jacket? Okay, but 95% of the people, 97% of the people would wear it, okay? When you come here for Friday night services, normally I'm the only one, or somebody, Charlie sometimes almost always has a jacket, and Benny, but very few people wear a jacket, let alone a tie. You come for Kol Nidre, almost every man wears a tie and a jacket. We don't write it anywhere. There's no we don't have any rules, but you know, people just figure out it's Kol Nidre, we need to wear ties and jackets, okay? It used to be for funerals the same way. By the way, I'm wearing ties and jackets, or today a vest, for almost every class, only because I started a day in the cemetery. Not because I feel I need to wear a tie and a jacket for this class. But if I were a rabbi in New York City, for example, I would have worn a tie and a jacket every single day, because that's the unofficial uniform. Okay, that's what is expected. I wish there was a better way.
I remember the first time I flew at 12 years old, everyone was dressed up, everyone had a jacket on, and that was how flying was. And, the dress has changed, of course, over the years, and including at churches and synagogues. You see people wearing shorts and you see people wearing T-shirts and stuff like that.
Yes, absolutely. And things may come back or change. I don't really know. You can keep it there, and then when somebody else will be speaking, you will please transfer. Yeah, things keep changing all the time. The meaning of clothes change constantly. When you watch old movies, all men had their fedoras. And actually, I listened to, it was about, many years ago, about all the rules. When the hat off, hat on, you see a lady, it's off, you want that, you go into a church, I'll talk about it later, hat off. People who don't really know, many Christians come to the synagogue and say, we are confused because we put hat on, okay? And you can wear a hat instead of a yarmulke. Baseball cap is the same as a yarmulke, okay? So, but it's a cultural thing. And we'll talk about a few of them. So I want to start here with the tzitzit, okay? The fringes of our talit. So let's read the commandment from the Bible. God said, speak to the children of Israel and tell them to make for themselves fringes on the corners of their garments. Now, remember, their garments, they didn't wear shirts. They were something like, what do you call it, poncho? A poncho, okay? Like a rectangular thing with a hole in the middle. Okay, that was the most common garment that they wore. So when you have it, you have four corners. Okay, so this God said to them, and on the four corners of your garments, and to put on their fringe of each corner a blue thread. The word is tchelet, and it shall be a fringe for you that you may look upon it and remember all of the commandments of the Lord. So God said, don't just wear the poncho. On each corner, I want you to put these fringes, these tassels. Because why? What's the verse says here? Remember the commandments. So if you are just about to transgress these, if you think I'm kidding, I included one of the most fun stories from the Talmud. I didn't make it up, and this is a short version because had we read the whole thing, we wouldn't have had time for anything else.
Is it the blue thread, or is it the
blue thread? I will talk about it. Yeah, I'll talk much more about it. It's it. But this story is just too good not to be studied. So there was once a man who was very meticulous in the mitzvah of tzitzit. That's nice of him. He heard of a certain prostitute. Just see how fast they move from very meticulous. And he heard of a certain prostitute in the cities of the sea who charged 400 gold coins for her service. I didn't check exactly the value of 400 gold coins, but it's a lot. When the time came for them to be together, okay, so he decided that that's the best way to invest his money. So, and the long story tells us because she was in Rome. So when you live in Israel, you have to take a ship. It's a big schlep, right? You don't just take an Uber and get to your favorite companion. So when he came, his four fringes came and slapped him across his face. He slipped away and sat upon the ground. He said to her, by the service, it's an expression in the Talmud, I saw no blemish in you. However, our God commanded us a single commandment called tzitzit. Now these fringes appeared to me as four witnesses. Okay, so he paid the fee, was about to perform the act, and in the last second, these fringes prevented him from doing it. Okay? We can have so much fun with this story, but not tonight. Actually, for Purim, we should have had it. Having a glass of wine and telling some of these amazing stories from the Talmud. Okay, the story continues like many of these stories. He was so impressed with his piety that immediately she changed her profession, moved to Israel, and became, I'm not making it up. Okay, but this is the idea of the tzitzit as a reminder of the commandments. But and this is the way that I and some of you here were brought up. But my second journey into studying Judaism involved modern scholarship, archaeology, and comparison to other ancient Near Eastern societies. And when you have this knowledge, which our ancestors, I mean, the medieval commentators did not have, you discover completely new things. Because at that time, where these commandments were written, the custom, the culture was that royalty and important people wear elaborate hems over their garments. And the most elaborate ones were these fringes, these tassels. Okay, the longer they wear, the better they wear. So with that in mind, now we understand that this is not just a little reminder where you are about to perform a sin, but it has a completely different dimension. So why is God telling the people of Israel, I want you to wear these fringes? Because I, God, see you, my people Israel, as, and I quote, a kingdom of priests. You're all royalty to me. You're all special to me. So I want you to look like the other nations' highest society members. Okay? So these tassels, these fringes, for the original readers of the Bible, they knew exactly what it meant. It was a status symbol. It was a declaration, I am an important person. I'm wearing that. Okay. Now, if it's not clear or if you are not certain about what I'm talking about, the blue, and this is not just regular blue, this is what we call royal blue, is the most important component of the ancient or original tzitzit. Because today, if I want to buy a shirt, white shirt or purple garment costs the same, right? You don't pay extra for dyeing it. Back then, you paid a lot because they didn't have all the techniques and all the synthetic dyes that we have today. The most expensive dye, the most expensive color was blue, or what we call royal blue, which is a mixture of some blue purplish hue. And only recently, they discovered the reason and how to make it. Because this color, sort of this color, they needed thousands of snails. They made them from blood of snails. Yes, you probably read, because when they discovered it, because yeah, they discovered it in Greece by one of the islands, millions of shells of these snails. And when you read the articles, they're available online and you can easily find them. You learn how many thousands of snails you need to dye one thread. And the economists calculated that this dye at the time was more expensive than gold. But think about what it took to manufacture it. Okay, so that was the ultimate symbol of royalty. Hence, even today, the color is royal blue. Okay, there is a reason for every word we use. So the royal, because you really needed to be the queen in order to afford this kind of a color. It's another thing that we miss because we can have any color we want. It's so easy. But not back then. So God told the people of Israel, not only that I want you to have these fringes, I also want you to try and have at least one blue thread. Okay? Because when people look at you, and think about it, this is God now is the proud parent, right? It's the parent who wears their children's college t-shirts and say, wow, my child goes to somewhere. Okay, I want everyone to look at you and say, whoo, these are the children of God and look how wonderful they are. Okay, so this is quite an incredible thing. For thousands of years, they stopped using it. Now, if you look at any old talis or talit, I'll use it interchangeably, you won't find anything blue. And why? Because it was not available or because nobody was able to afford it. So you wouldn't do it. Recently, by recently, maybe I'm talking about 20 years ago, there are some people who decided to bring it back, and you can find some talitot with a blue thread. I decided to include it in our little exercise here for two reasons. One, because that was the original way of making it. And two, I believe it's going to make it a little bit easier because when we are going to wrap it around, you'll see it's easier to have a different color. Okay? So the whole idea of the tzitzit was for the people of Israel to look special, to look like the upper echelon of other societies. We are special. And the last thing I wanted to say about it is that there is an interesting story in the book of Samuel about the first two kings. Who was the first king of the Jews? Saul. King Saul. The second one was King David. Okay? David started as in Saul's camp, but it depends how you want to read the story. They became rivals. And Saul at one point wanted to kill him. And David had to flee. On one of these occasions, David hid in a cave. And Saul in the morning woke up and went to the cave to do what people do in the morning, to relieve himself, right? And David was shaken. He didn't want to be discovered by Saul. But when he felt safe enough, just try to envision the whole thing, or you may not want to because there are some disgusting parts to it, I guess. But David cut the hem of Saul's garment. We normally read it, or until recently, that he did it in order to show Saul, see, I was so close to you, I could have easily killed you. I spared your life. I was so close. So I cut your garment, the hem of, and the Torah, the Bible emphasizes the hem of his garment, that I could have killed you instead of just cutting the hem of your garment. But now we understand what David was doing. By cutting the fringe of Saul's garment, he basically dethroned him. He cut the symbol of Saul's monarch, as a king. Okay, so that's why, again, for the original reader of the story, it was very clear. You cut the fringes, you cut the status symbol. For us, we needed about 2,000 years to have modern archaeology and more knowledge of the ancient Near East to understand the full meaning of this story. Okay, and there are so many stories like that we understood them for 2,000 years and more on one level because we didn't have the historical background or the cultural background. Now, when we know, we say, wow, it's a much deeper story here. Okay, so this is the idea of the tzitzit, which I will teach you how to make. Any comments? Any questions? Tzitzit is worn only during the day, because when you read in the Torah the mitzvah of tzitzit, the line is hu reitem oto, and you shall see it. When do you see? During the day. Okay, so you don't wear talit in the evening except of one day a year, kol nidre. Okay, leaders of service normally wear talit, and people who read from the Torah, everything like that, they wear it. Okay, but people don't wear talit in the evening traditionally. Some people come to the temple and want to wear talit, by all means, there's no, but the obligation is during the day when you can see it. Is that okay for now? Some people or traditional people wear a talit or tzitzit all day long. So remember this poncho that I mentioned to you? You wear it underneath your shirt. Okay, like an undergarment. And that's why when you see the Hasidic people, normally they have the fringes hanging from the, so yes, where are they coming from? They're wearing this poncho here, and only the tzitziot, the fringes are out, but you don't see the actual garment. This was the thing I hated the most, and I'm not saying it lightly. Now, Israel has the beautiful humidity that Palm Beach County has. And when you are younger and you're outside all day and you play sports and you do things, and not on top, underneath your shirt, you have to have that thing too. This is a nightmare. But that's what people do because it's not only the talit. Now you may want to ask me if you have it. Actually, we call it talit katan, a small talit. If you have it, do you really need the talit? Not really, but it became a custom. Ashkenazi Jews do not wear a talit until they get married. I know it's a shock for many Americans because here your child becomes a bar or bat mitzvah, you buy them a talit, right? No, in Ashkenazi Jews, only during the wedding, when you need a talit, meaning when you lead the service or when you read from the Torah, you borrow one, okay? But you don't own your own talit. Sorry? What did you say, Art? Young children, they have it all the time, the talit katan, the tzitzit. But they don't have the talit that we wrap ourselves with. They don't need it, even after they become bar. Yeah, there is no bat mitzvah there because women don't wear it, obviously. Obviously, for the Haredi community, they don't need it. When they get married, this is one of the gifts that they receive. It was an interesting thing when my daughter got married recently. Her now husband asked, what do you want? You know, something symbol, and he wanted a very nice, very large talit. That he said it's time for him to own one. He had his little bar mitzvah one that he wanted, he thought was, and I don't know how big he was doing his bar mitzvah, but now he's 6'3", just like my daughter, who is 5 with heels. But okay. Head covers, that's a fun subject. I can tell you that Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Moses did not have a kippah or a shtreimel or a hat. Maybe they had something to help them protect themselves from the sun, but they didn't have any kippah, a kippah, yarmulka, yarmulke, many ways to name it, is relatively a late addition. And let's look at the first time that we find it, and this is in the Talmud. Rav Huna, the English. Rav Huna, son of Rav Joshua, would not walk 4 cubits with his head uncovered. He said, the divine presence Shechina is above my head. Okay, and there is another symbol, a little story in the Talmud about somebody's mother who told him, forced him to always to cover his head. And why? Because if you have some bad ideas, if you are going to do something like paying 400 gold coins for a prostitute in Rome, remember that there is something above you. And what is the something above you? God. Okay, so really this is the idea. There is no huge mystical, theological, religious ideas for the kippah from the very beginning, but a reminder that there is something above us. Just wait a second for the mic. We want to respect our friends on Zoom.
When I was younger, I went to Talmud Torah, and we were told the yarmulke stopped the existence of man, and above him was God. That's why you wore something on top of your head.
Yeah,
that's what we were told.
That's how it started, and it started as the rabbis in the Talmud called midat chasidut. It's a measurement of piety. You didn't have to do it. There was no obligation. But if you want to feel extra pious, you cover your head, but that was not a common practice necessarily. Maimonides, who lived in the mostly 12th century, okay, we're talking about some 900 years ago, wrote that it was improper for a scholar to walk without head covering. So it was it was improper. It's not a sin, it's not a violation of any commandment or anything like that, just improper, but for whom? A scholar. Okay, so it was more of a way to distinguish yourself as a scholar, which means a rabbi or a teacher of Judaism. You put something on your head in order to mark yourself as such. So Maimonides used the word improper and only in connection to scholars. But in the 17th century, Orach HaChaim, which is a very important halachic story, a source, you see, do you follow me? Do you know where I'm reading here? He said, the Taz, that's the acronym of his name, argues that because it became common practice for non-Jews to remove their hats as a sign of respect, for a Jew to do the same would be a violation of Chukot HaGoyim, following foreign statutes. Thus, covering the head became a mandatory way to distinguish the Jew and show honor to God. In other words, we cover our head because the Gentiles do not. There are many halachot, there are many laws like that, that the pure origin was they do it this way, and for us to separate ourselves from the ways they do it, we do it the opposite. Okay? So that's you'll see it in many times, and when we used to do our videos, we did several of them, just the way of the thinking. And even when I studied it, maybe in your Talmud Torah, it was the same. There were many different things that had absolutely no roots to be forbidden by Judaism, For example, I think I shared with you one time, there was somebody in my class who parted his hair in the middle, and he was punished. And so, what's the big deal? But no, the rabbi decided that that's how the Gentiles comb their hair, and for a Jew, this is inappropriate. No, but it's rooted so deeply into traditional Judaism, okay, that to do it, even if they think, so it's not prohibited explicitly, but if it seems like you're acting not like a Jew, that's already a violation. And that's what he says here, because when people go to church, as we mentioned before, they take off their hat because it's a sign of disrespect to keep your hat on in a church. We Jews do the opposite. Okay, so this is part of the idea of head covering for men, and I included some of the different things. Let's skip for a little bit to the glossary here. Just the kippah, there are different kinds of yarmulkes. You can tell about people's denomination or affiliation with Jewish groups according to their head covering. So if it's a knitted kippah or a leather kippah, this is more either modern Orthodox in Israel or more liberal here. If it's black velvet, it's what you would call black hats, right? This is a Haredi, the ultra-Orthodox. Leather kippahs, I think they are falling out of fashion now. We have different ones for bat mitzvah. You all know the shtreimel, the thing that is made of fur, of animals' fur. This is the shtreimel. It belongs to the Hasidic movement. And if you really know your shtreimels, you can tell which Hasidic group the person belongs to. Because if it's flat, it's this way. If it's tall, it's a different one. It's the colors. It's the way they comb it. There is a way to comb the things. This way, that way. You wear it in which angle. If it's flat, if your yarmulke shows a little bit from the front, from the... Okay, now you say, don't use the word meshuga or something like that, but every group has its own, when you belong to a club, of its own rules that only members of the club understand. Okay, and that's what you do to belong. You don't do it consciously. That's how everyone wears their shtreimel in my place. So that's the thing. These shtreimels, by the way, are super expensive. They are super expensive. They're made of either 13 or 26 pieces of foxtails or other animals, and it's an expensive thing. If you fly to Israel, especially on El Al, you'll see them coming with boxes, and they wrap them better than you would wrap a 5-day-old baby.
Do all men wear kippah underneath them?
Yes, they all wear kippah underneath, yes. And these shtreimels, by the way, are normally for Shabbat and holidays. It's not something that you would wear regularly. Now, where did they get the idea for it? That was the hat of Polish nobility in the 17th century. Remember what I told you about the tzitzit, the fringes? That was the... Okay, so for them, it's something big, and many people associate it with being Jewish. When you go to a nice museum and look at paintings from that time, you'll see a lot of the nobility wearing these hats. Some of Rembrandt paintings have, and he was not painting the Jews. He did paint Jews because he lived in the Jewish community, in the Jewish area in Amsterdam. But that was the common thing. So at that time, these Hasidic people, oh, wow, that's what the royalty, the aristocrats, the wealthy people wear. We should wear it too. And it became something that, okay, we're not allowed to change it, even though very few people wear it regularly now, but it became a symbol of Judaism. Definitely Moses, Abraham, and neither Rabbi Akiva wore that. Okay, enough with the, head covering for women. That's really fascinating. There is a disturbing passage in the book of Numbers. If a husband suspects, just suspect, it doesn't need any evidence, doesn't need anything, that his wife spent time with another man, he should put her through an ordeal. An ordeal, this is the literal meaning of an ordeal, a test. So she has to write something and with a special ink and then drink the ink, the whole thing that I don't want to get into it. But when she goes to the priest, look at the verse that I have here, and the priest shall set the woman before the Lord and uncover the woman's head. Okay? He has to uncover. From there, the rabbis learned that women wore something to always cover their hair, okay? Which is not necessarily the case, because the word here, para, that this translation says uncover, can also mean, and it more often than not, mean just to messer her, okay? It's just to show her as in the least attractive way. So if her hair was combed, or if she was if she braided her hair, or they have to mess it up, okay, for as part of it. But that was the first reference that anyone can find for that. I went and studied what modern scholars say about it. And what we learned was that for women of higher status, it was customary to cover their heads, meaning wearing nice hats or nice head covering. Okay, it was not because they needed to hide something, but that's what they did. Okay, I guess if you go to a fancy event in England, the Derby, right? The Kentucky Derby, you wear these funny looking little things. Is a symbol of, right? That's what, but when you go, the last image I have is from what? The funeral of the Queen, right? What was it, 2 years ago, something like that? You looked and every single woman was wearing a beautiful hat, because it's a big part of the British culture still, okay? It was the case in ancient times also, for the area where the people of Israel lived. So a woman of high status was wearing a hat or covered her hair. That's how it started. Okay, so to have a hair that is uncovered meant that you are of a low status. Okay, and there is a quote that I didn't include here, but they said that prostitutes, I know there are too many prostitutes for one class, but prostitutes or women of ill repute, if you will, walk without a head covering, because that belongs to the high society. But later, about 1,000 years ago, it changed completely, and head covering became a means of modesty, because the rabbi started to associate women's hair with something sexual, okay? Before that, hair was hair, so there was no problem. But when they attach the term, in Hebrew, it's called erva, like nakedness, okay? We all have parts that we are expected to cover on, at least most times, right? Because our society decides what considers appropriate, what's not. You go to some places in Europe or others, so people go to public beaches dressed differently than here in the US, right? But that's a cultural thing. At one point, the Jews decided that hair is one of these inappropriate parts of the woman's body to be exposed, especially of the married woman. If you're not married, you can, because you want to be attractive, because you want to get married ultimately. Once you're married, you have to hide your attractiveness. And one of the ways was to cover your head. Only recently speaking, women started to wear the shaitel, a wig. Okay, because wearing a wig, you follow the mitzvah of covering your hair without being less attractive. For many women, actually, the wigs that they buy make them much more attractive, because no normal human would put something on their head that make them less attractive than they were without. So if you have to wear this thing in 90 degrees all day long, at least look great, right? And this is still, I'm shocked that it's still the norm according to many, but not all Orthodox or ultra-Orthodox societies. There are still some rabbis who said, no, that violates the whole idea of modesty, because yes, you cover your natural hair, but you are not changing your appearance. If anything, you are even prettier than before. Hence, more men would look at you, which is exactly the opposite of what they wanted to achieve. And therefore, some women use just different kind of scarves. And I had the whole list of it, of the tishel and the other things that are there. Okay, so if it started in the beginning that hats for women was a status symbol, later it became a way to it was associated with modesty. And I gave a sermon several years ago when I was introduced to a very problematic thing. Now, if you push all the way the idea that a woman once married should be the least attractive, right? Who does it the best? The Taliban's. Think about the burqa, right? The burqa is perfect. You have no idea who is the person underneath the burqa. Everything is covered, okay? I don't want to talk about other religions today. That's their problem. My problem is that women in Jerusalem and Beit Shemesh started to like it. And they are known in, again, I'm talking about the ultra-Orthodox community, as the Taliban Jews. They use the actual word Taliban women or Taliban Jews. But that's exactly the way they look. As far as I didn't do a research for this class. I did it when I gave a sermon some time ago about it. There are no men, no matter how religious the rabbis are, who condone it. They said, no, there's no need for it. But they want to do it. Because again, if you push something to the end, this is the best. Nobody can see any. You don't just cover your hair and your arms and your everything. And maybe some men would be attracted to it. I don't know. But now the whole concept, which I mentioned more than once, it's important. It's not because of the women, because all these laws were written by men, and the rabbi explained that the whole idea of tzniut, of modesty, is not because there is anything wrong with women. There is a lot wrong with men. So to protect men from themselves, the women have to hide themselves, okay, and to be unattractive and to cover as much as possible. Okay, I don't know how it is in Islam, but that's the whole idea. Protect the men because, yeah. Okay. No, they're pigs. That's what they're. No, it's not my opinion. Yeah. No, but that's the reason. It's not. If you knew how many stories there are in the Talmud about the greatest rabbis who just could not control themselves. And so, yeah, why, but if everyone, if there are no women around, you're not going to be attracted to women, right? Or if they cover themselves completely, at least men are safe. And the women are just so hot and uncomfortable, but they didn't think about it. Okay, shatnez, let's take 5 minutes on that because I already went longer than I wanted. There is something that is called kosher garments. It's relevant mostly for men who buy expensive suits because the Torah says, if you see number 5 here, "Uveged kilayim shatnez lo ya'eh," neither shall there come upon you a garment of 2 kinds of stuff mingled together, meaning no linen and wool together. You're not allowed to mix linen and wool. So if you are wearing, it's not so common, but in some very high-end men's suit, they use, especially for the shoulder material, they use some linen, some flax, if you want, which is not kosher if you're planning to buy some fancy Italian suit. But here is the fascinating thing. I mean, who cares if the fabric is a combination of linen and wool? The priests, the priestly vestments, their garments were made of, you can guess, linen and wool. Okay, the curtains of the tabernacle, the Mishkan, the portable temple, were made of linen and wool. So probably, in contrary to what we used to think, it's not that there is something inherently bad in these mixtures, just the opposite. It's too good. So what the Torah is basically saying, it's only for priest and the temple. You guys, the common people, are not allowed to do it because then you pretend to be something you are not. Okay, you cannot go to Phil, our police officer, and take his clothes and pretend being a police officer, right? This is a violation of the law. So it's saying is that not that there's something inherently bad, it's really good, but it's too good for you commoners. It has to be saved only for the priest. And just 1 second, how do we know? Because again, from other societies, we learn that this combination of linen and wool was considered to be something like a sacred hybrid. It was fabric that was used only for the most sacred and the most important people. And if you, as a commoner, worry, this is an identity theft. Just 1 second, I want to finish that idea, and then I'll take some questions. The last idea that is related to something else, that many things in the Bible, is Cain and Abel. Many scholars see the conflict, some of the conflicts in the Bible, as a conflict between farmers and shepherds. Think about shepherds did not need restricted areas. They were walking with their animals wherever, but farmers needed their distinct area, and they were fighting a lot. And we know it historically, it was true. Cain was a farmer. Abel was a shepherd, okay? And these fights were all the time. Now, wool comes from animals. Linen comes from flax, okay? It's a plant. So don't mix the shepherds and the farmers, okay? This tension has been around for thousands of years back then. I'll take the quick questions and then we'll learn how to tie the talit. You have the microphone.
Can you wear a linen shirt with a wool suit? Are they allowed to touch?
Yes, they're not allowed to be woven together. That's a great question. Thank you. Yes, you can.
Can Kohanim wear
Hold on a second.
mixed fabrics?
Can Kohanim, can the priests were mixed now? There are no Kohanim now. I mean, Bruce, but no, it does. There are really no Kohanim now. This is by saying Kohanim, there aren't Kohanim is the Hebrew word for priests. Jews didn't have priests for almost 2,000 years. Now, those who see themselves as a part of the lineage of the priests, it's really nice, but it means nothing today. Okay, and they definitely do not wear the garment. If you are in the habit of reading the weekly portion, this is exactly the portion that talks about the garments of the Kohanim. Does anyone here has the stamina to learn how to make your own tzitzit? Okay, that's great. So let's do it.
Do you want me to hand these out?
Yes, please. Oh, right. Those of you who watch us on Zoom, this is time to say thank you and goodbye. I wish I had the ability to send you the materials. You know what, maybe we can think about it in the future. We'll have the materials available ahead of time, and those of you who want to watch us on Zoom can come pick it up and then be part of it. But I didn't think about it until 4 seconds ago. So thank you, and that concludes our